We just stepped on their face with a hobnail boot and broke their nose. The way to the end zone, and Georgia is going to conquer the Crimson Tide.
So how about them fucking dogs? That's what I told them.
Hope it doesn't take that long again. Go Dogs.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the 100 Sanford podcast. We are back after a week off. Foss, what's going on?
Hey, man, I'm good. Guess what?
What's up, man? I already know
the dog's still undefeated, man. Jeez. They ain't lost
man.
a minute. It was like last December or something. Last time
man.
They lost, and then before then, it was like the previous year. Like, jeez. What's like, man?
Yeah, man.
Dogs, man. What's good? What's good?
I'm still celebrating. I got new gear coming in. I got the new hat, new fitted joint that came in with the black on black with the dog right there, the old dog logo.
I ain't seen that one before.
Yeah, man. I might buy you one and send it down to. Just because I love it, bro.
I gotta peep that one.
I got the new glass. I got the new glass with the new logo on it.
Oh, you still
my bourbon glass, and this is a shout out to my.
You must have got your orders in like immediately. Like I slow poke, man. I ain't got none of my gear done came yet. I'm getting the notifications about stuff
being on its way.
Being on its way, but man, I don't have no back-to-back gear yet. So hopefully it comes soon.
Well, you know what? This glass I got, man. I got this off of Amazon. I forget the name of the company that makes them, but I got the whole set. I got last year's set. I got this one. I'm probably getting a little shot glass, and so this is in honor of our boys over there at My God, a Podcast. So tonight I'm drinking a little 1792 as I relax and do this show tonight.
Hey man, I get it. I wish I could, but I'm behind the wheel right now. So, maybe later, brother. But hey, before we get started, man, we have to give a shout out to our sponsor, Vacay. That's right. After winning the national championship and dealing with the offseason, I know you folks need to relax, unwind, and take a vacay by elevating your mood with Vacay's premium Delta 8 products. We're talking about the vapes. They got the gummies, the multiple flavors, and things that'll help you relax in this crazy world that we live in. So head on over to takeavacay.com. That's TAKEAVAYCAY.com. Use the promo code 100Sanford and get 10% off your order. Vacay is here to relax your mind and increase your overall wellness. It has for me. So, hey, take a vacay. But yeah, man, I'm sure your stuff is going to come in soon. None of my stuff from Fanatics has come in. I think some people rushed on over to sporting goods stores or whatever. I think Dick's and all the rest of them and got that back-to-back gear, but I'm waiting for mine to come in. Yeah, I think I was able to get one thing off Fanatics or whatever, but I like to order stuff from local vendors too. My boy Frico Rico, one of the artists in the city, well-known artist. He does pieces and commissions for a lot of people. He put out a back-to-back shirt, that I'm waiting on. It should be coming soon, so I can flex on these fools. People like we got people up in arms around here, man. Especially like Bama fans. They all boo-hooing and crazy.
Man.
Like, jeez, you got number one class in the country. Still got Nick Saban.
Still throwing shots.
Won 11 games, I think 10, 11 games. Jeez, is the sky falling?
Bro, they still throwing shots. Everybody's still throwing shots. And I don't know why they throwing shots.
Tennessee fans?
Yeah.
Really?
If it wasn't for this, if it wasn't for that. Look, if it wasn't for us, y'all wouldn't even be relevant. We make you relevant by you losing to us. That's the way I look at it. Is Graham Coffee in here yet?
It looks like it is.
What's up, man?
There he goes.
What's up,
there
man?
It is.
The man with the
man,
What's up, GC?
I don't know all that, but just man, just trying to deal with life without football, man. We only got 3 football games left, and then we're going into an 8-month drought.
Yeah,
it's depressing.
Yeah, right. It is depressing, man. You sitting there trying to figure out, do I watch reruns of games?
Right.
Look, I'm going to tell you how depressing it is. I come home and I got a package on the front door. I open it up. I got so excited. You want to know what it was? What? It was my son's flag football jersey. I was like, oh, man, at least I got something to tide me over for a couple of months. His flag football jersey coming in. So, yeah, man. So, but,
I will say it would be a lot more depressing if you were going into this long winter off-season period without back-to-back national championships. I wonder what that would be like. You don't know anything about that?
I don't know. Ask a Bama fan. They know very well. That's a Tennessee fan. They know.
Ask a Florida fan. You didn't even have a bowl game, so that's like. Or no, I'm sorry.
No, they had a bowl game.
No,
they got smoked.
Yeah, you can be forgiven for thinking Florida didn't play in a bowl, seeing as how they did not show up. They lost by 31 to Oregon State.
Oh man, and I don't care who didn't play that game. You don't supposed to lose that bad. Jeez.
No.
Have some pride.
Like that. I mean, you're making all the SEC look bad. Honestly, is what you're doing when you show up like that. But man, I don't know. The bowl thing is interesting, but. Yeah, I mean, there's not actual games going on, but there definitely hasn't been a shortage of college football news, like coaching, assistant coaching moves and transfer portal and all that. So,
man, you just open up the door, Graham. Go ahead. What you say, Foss?
Let me ask some stuff.
There you go.
I get out of the loop sometimes with getting busy, and correct me if I'm wrong. It seems like there hasn't been a lot of movement with the Georgia staff. Has there been a lot? Am I missing some things, or are a lot of people staying in place?
Yeah, the only real move that's happened yet, which we actually broke the news of this on Dog Central, was Eddie Gordon, who was the assistant offensive line coach, kind of Cyril's assistant. I mean, he was listed as an analyst, but even at the championship parade, you saw Van Pran shouting him out. I mean, he's a really good coach, young guy, but he got hired as the new OL coach at UAB. So
nice.
He left, which is a great, that's a great.
You always want to get your own room. You know what I mean? So that's good. And if we keeping it real, just there aren't a lot of black offensive line coaches that get a shot. That's one position that it's not populated by a lot of black guys. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if you knew that, but it's not, it doesn't happen. It's definitely, there's in the NFL, there may be a handful, if that. There's been time in the NFL when there's been one, maybe two. I don't know how it is in college, but it's good to see him get his own room, add to the number. But what made me think about that is earlier today, and I was thinking like, man, I haven't heard anything coaching wise with this staff. And it's like, I wonder if people are really chomping at the bit to try to go for three in a row. Like, I think they see a good thing, the floodgates could open next year. We could lose a lot of coaches, especially if we do well. It's like, dang, they got some good coaches over there. Let me get a few of them. If they do well, if they happen to make it to the playoffs or even get another national championship, I'm pretty sure some people will get poached next year. If not, with nobody moving this year, and I'm assuming it's by choice that nobody.
Well. Yeah, I mean, there was definitely I know for a fact that, Bama's trying to hire an OC and a DC right now. And, Saban wanted to hire Glenn Schumann as the defensive coordinator there and definitely, reached out. But, I mean, from what I've been told, Schumann has not accepted an interview. At this point, it looks like he's going to get a big raise from Georgia, which he deserves, and stay in Athens. And it's kind of funny, man, because you remember, Mark Richt tried to hire Kirby twice to come to Georgia as DC, right? And the last time it happened, I think, was 2013 or 2014, and Nick told him straight up, why would you go take that job and work for him when in a couple of years you could be the head coach there? And I mean, I don't know what Saban's plans are or what, but people don't think, no, Schumann, he's an Alabama grad, but his dad played for Bear Bryant there in, I believe, the 70s, right? He grew up, true blue Alabama, but when Kirby brought him with him for his first staff in Athens, and nobody knew who he was. Everybody was like, what? Who is this guy, right? And, he started as an off-field kind of analyst type guy. But point being, I think the loyalty that Kirby has showed him has paid off. And I think if you're an assistant on Georgia's staff, Dan Lanning was co-defensive coordinator at Georgia 2 years ago, right? Which is the same title that Schumann has right now. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, he's at Oregon now. Oregon's the hottest program west of the Mississippi right now, man.
Yeah, I think Lanning's going to do really well out there.
Yeah, for sure.
You made some interesting points. Why make a lateral move now? Of course, the money would be awesome if he was, if Bama was to get him, but Georgia can bump that pay up. And why make a lateral move when his next move is going to be a head coaching job, period.
Right.
The resume is there. It's stamped. You know what I mean? So, why make that move right now? Uproot whatever you got going on, leave the champions, and then, make a lateral move. Wouldn't make sense because his next job, probably as soon as next year, is going to be a head coaching job. So.
Well, you know what, Foss? I think you got to go back to what you said, though. Are these guys sitting around thinking to themselves, let's go for 3? I mean, people forget after next year, we're increasing the size of the college football playoffs. I mean, anybody running back-to-back, it's going to be hell to get through, first of all, just to go back-to-back. When you start talking about 3-peat and a gauntlet of 8 games, eight teams in the college football playoffs, and eventually probably they're going to increase it to 12 or something like that, you'll never see this again.
No.
You're living in a world of immortality if you get the 3-peat.
Well, you've never seen a 3-peat. The last 3-peat in college football was in the 1930s with Minnesota.
Right. Which that's what I'm talking about.
That's not real, that's not the modern era. It's before, it's before black players were allowed on, a lot of rosters. It's frankly, totally different.
Frankly, nobody cares.
Exactly.
Nobody mentions the Georgia 1942 chip.
Man. Hey, hold up a second.
Nobody does. Nobody mentions it.
My dad listens to the show, and he will fight all up and down about the University of Pittsburgh winning their championships. I tell him all the time. Pop,
that was the 80s, though, right?
No, they won in 76.
Tony Dorsett.
No, but before that, all their other championships were in the 30s and the 20s and all that kind of stuff. I think Pitt got 9, but it's all that earlier, leather helmet era.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of like you kind of have to start counting real championships with integration.
Yeah.
That makes it modern football. It's the same as now, except the athletes rather, but right. That makes it modern football. And to go the 3-peat in modern football would be nuts. Bama has looked like a freaking juggernaut for the last 15 years, and they got one back-to-back.
Mm-hmm.
At time they've looked unbeatable, and if anybody could go 3-peat, you would have think it would have been one of these Bama teams. It's just hard to do.
Yeah. Well, I think that's one thing I want to say though about Georgia, right? Is everyone's talking about the drive for 3, and I get it, right? It's the nature of how we consume sports, and you look at Georgia's schedule next year, the advanced stat people and the folks that do all the numbers, they got Georgia at a projected 11.6 wins, which is a higher number than they had coming into this season, right?
Right.
They probably don't face anybody that can beat them until they see Tennessee in late November. So, yeah, I get it, but at the same time, I always think about the kick 6, right? The Auburn play against Bama in 2013, which that year Bama was going for not, a 3 in a row, but they were trying to win 3 out of 4 national titles, which is also very historic, right? And like, this is a weird ass sport. It is. And like lightning strikes in strange ways. Like that play was a 1 in a million moonshot that you will probably never see again for the rest of your life. And I mean, it was fun to watch, right? Like we still talk about it. We're talking about it right now. But I mean, point being is just when, college football, the athletes are so good, but they're also so young, and you bust coverages and you blow assignments and weird things happen. And what Kirby Smart has done is, to his credit, like removed so much of the variables and the uncertainty from the equation, but still there is variables and uncertainty in the equation. And so if Georgia doesn't do it, it's not going to be some failure of any kind.
It's just,
right?
It's football. Like you can't. Yeah. That's why football is the greatest, man. I've had these conversations and debates, about football. NFL playoffs versus NBA playoffs, and I get it. I love NBA playoffs. It's good. It's good basketball. You know what I'm saying? They turn it up a notch, but you got 7 times to win 4. That NFL, that football playoffs, anything can happen, and you're out of there. I don't care how good you are. You're out of there. Like you got to bring your A game, and sometimes your A game might even be enough because your kicker shanked a kick. You know what I mean?
That's right.
It's raining, and you fumbled on your own goal line, and you got the best offense in the league, and you fumble on your own goal line, and you can't recover. Right?
I mean, Ohio State played a pretty perfect game against Georgia
for their standards. Yeah.
They had to play the game that they played. Like they had to, and they still lost.
And they kind of just they mismanaged the last few plays, and then the end game was a little bit shady as from a play calling standpoint. They didn't go for the jugular, and it cost them. And it's like, I mean, man, the 2012 Georgia-Alabama SEC championship, right? Where it's like,
man, I was there.
I was there. I was sitting right in front of where Chris Conley caught that tip pass, right?
And I was on the other side. No. You talking about the one that
I was on the Georgia sideline? Yeah. Where the time ran out.
That's life is crazy.
Yeah,
I was right on that 5-yard line too.
Were you?
I was there as media.
Okay.
I was there, for Comcast Sports South, and nice. I was right there on the field, right there, and like me and Graham didn't know each other, and we were probably 30 yards apart.
20 feet away, something like that. For sure. No, but I mean, like those, and I think that's what you have to appreciate about what Georgia has done over the last couple of years is like, a lot of times at this high level of football, a game will come down to not just one play, but like one player, right? Like having that one guy, like for Georgia, right? Like, I mean, at the end of that game against Ohio State, they had 4 true freshmen on the field because other guys were cramping up and hurt and injured. Like you had, Marvin Jones Jr. out there and Jalen Walker like chasing after CJ Stroud and almost sacking him to end that game. But like that's something that nobody else has almost in college football is the ability to throw in your third string, edge rusher and he get home, right? Like it's just, but would it have been a failure on them in any way if they hadn't? No, like they're, Ohio State's got 2 tackles that are, going to be probably top 40 picks in the draft in a few months, right? Like they got good players. These other guys are on scholarship too, and it's just, I mean, the Missouri game this year, right? Like that was
Graham. Yeah, I was just going to say that. It was real
weird,
fluky.
but I mean, what was the difference in that game? Malachi Starks tackling a guy on the 1 yard line,
exactly
on a 65-yard run.
That's crazy.
Tracks them.
Yeah,
Think about that. If he scores, there is no back-to-back. In my opinion, they're up by I think 16 points at that point.
I think. There's no 15-0. But you have to think if he scores and Georgia runs the table, they still make the playoff.
Maybe not, because that's midway through the season. We don't know where they're going to rank us.
It's October. It's early October. I mean,
it's early October. There would have been a debate: does Bama get in? You know, stuff like that. I mean, anything's fluky at that point, right? It affects your mental aspect of the rest of the season. Our guys is dialed in. You know what I mean? That was something that actually caused them a hiccup where they said, you know what, we got to get more dialed in for this season. Anything can happen, but that might have been what was needed for this team.
This season was fun to watch because of the up and down. Last year, like I said, man, they were so dominant last year. Even though they lost the game to Bama, I was sitting there. I still made plans for Indy. I knew we were still going to – we lost that game. I knew we were still going to go into Indy. I knew we were going to mash Michigan out. And most of all, I knew that Bama couldn't beat us twice.
Felt the same.
And so, I was like, oh, yeah, book everything. I'm going to see us win a championship.
Right.
You know what I mean? Yeah. And that's exactly what happened. But for the most part, they were very dominant, and you just never thought they would, could lose. And like it was expected. This year it's like, man, you got to see them face adversity, climb up out of holes, replace guys. Like, it was just an overall effort, and like you really could see the coaching effort shine through with this team. Like, last year he had 16 freaking draft picks. It's like if you can't win the majority of your game with 16 draft picks, you're a crappy coach.
Facts.
Like, dude, they coached their ass off this year.
Yeah.
Really, like the dig out of some of the situations they were in, man. That took some fortitude by the coaches and the guys on the field too. But it was just very impressive to see, to me from a coaching standpoint, because like I remember being 18, like first of all, I wasn't playing at 18. You know what I mean? So you got guys on the field, man, that were in class, a year ago, or less, you know what I mean? So in high school campuses, you know what I mean? So like, it's just to see them, do what they did. It was just fun to watch, man. Awesome to watch.
Well, Foss, put this in perspective though. 1 second, Graham. Okay. Kirby said that at the beginning of the year, that this was he felt his best coaching unit. They don't lose anybody except Eddie Gordon. And you're going into next season.
Maybe.
Right. It's not over yet. Graham. But
he's not going for sure.
No, Eddie Gordon's gone for sure. I just mean we don't know, somebody else
who they lose.
Job.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm being positive. If they don't, it's the same coaching staff.
Yeah.
Which, was getting me thinking as in terms of, as I'm projecting and looking at this team saying, okay, Monken dialed up so many things for Stetson Bennett. They believed in him. I mean, they were inseparable, really. I believe that much in Monken. And then I started thinking to myself, I know we've been talking about Beck as quarterback, but what do you think Monken would prefer or Kirby would prefer based off of what they ran this particular year with Stetson? I mean, there could be a dark horse. I have no idea. I mean, it's pretty interesting.
Look, the dark horse is Stockton.
Right? Yeah, like, that's the dark horse. I didn't want to bring it up. I don't understand, but
Yeah, I was listening to you guys space the other day.
Oh yeah,
on Twitter, and I didn't know much about the QBs. I know Vandergrift's the father and stuff like that. And then I remember him from high school. I don't know anything about Stockton, and just hear the way you guys talk about Stockton and his, how cerebral he is, that can play a big part if he has the physical, tools to handle, the job, like to have a guy that knows what to do all the time is like that's key, and it's rare. And so you never know.
I mean, like, let's remember, he broke Deshaun Watson's state of Georgia touchdown record.
Oh, really?
Stockton did. Yeah. Like he has the most touchdowns in the history of the state. Like is he the prototypical, I think Beck is the guy that fits that like NFL mold where he's 6'4" and he's, he stands tall in the pocket and he's got a run. Sure.
He seems pretty accurate to me too.
He is. I think he definitely is. And he's shown his legs at times, right? Like, I mean, we saw him.
He's not slow.
South Carolina linebacker in the open field. Like, he can do enough to keep it on his own read and keep a defense honest a couple times a game.
If he can run like Aaron Murray, that's fine for me.
Yeah, Aaron Murray, man. I remember when he busted that quarterback draw at Tennessee. That was wild, dude.
That was like 70 yards, some crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. Brought Georgia back in that game. But yeah, I mean, I think with Stockton, like, I don't want to say this as a knock to anybody because when I was 18 to 22 years old, I was a total shithead, right? Like I was, I never could have played college football. I was not that responsible, right? Like I was, out having a good time. But Stockton's that dude that like showed up on campus and, like it's some of the stories you used to hear about like David Pollock type guys where it's like, he's running the extra 10 yards at the end of the sprint and he's making the older guys look bad. Or, I mean, the TCU game, like Max Duggan, the TCU quarterback, mobile guy. So Stockton says, I'm wearing a contact jersey on the scout team this week to give my teammates the best look they can. Like that's the little above and beyond things that I think, if you're a coach and you're handing over the keys to a Ferrari, which is what this Georgia roster is to a quarterback, like those things make you sleep well at night when it's like, oh, this kid's 18 and he already watches more film than anybody. Like at the same time though, it's, Carson Beck's been here for 3 or 4 years and he knows the offense inside and out. And we've seen him come into games and, not just check plays at the line of scrimmage, but like check into touchdown plays at the line of scrimmage. So, I think that's the big question, right? Is like, can Beck, kind of flip that switch and, just be that guy that is the example and that people follow and is just kind of, that quarterback that, that stereotypical quarterback of the guy who, is just
we just got to see.
If he doesn't, there's somebody waiting.
You want to see the guy. You want to see the guy that's the leader. I've always said that your quarterback, each side of the ball needs to have at least one leader. Sometimes it's multiple guys, but to be the guy, that guy that everyone looks to. It doesn't have to be the quarterback all the time. I've been on teams where it wasn't the quarterback, but we at least had somebody because you need somebody. You can't have a team that's just floating. You got to have a team that's following, somebody. You know what I mean? And a lot of times, sometimes it's not even a coach. It's not a position coach. I've seen passive, non-leader position coaches. You know what I mean? Before, but sometimes you got to have somebody, but you would prefer it be your quarterback. On defense, you would prefer it be your Mike linebackers. He's the guys that call plays. Or you prefer it to be like your safety, the guys that, take charge. We don't know who that is at quarterback yet. I can remember when I was working with the Rams, and a lot of people may not think so, but Sam Bradford was talented as hell.
Oh,
like,
dude!
Sam,
completely accurate.
Sam could spin it. He was super accurate. He could spin it. Sam was not a leader to me. And then there was nobody else on offense. Right. That's my opinion, just from my scouting perspective. There was nobody else that stepped up, and Sam wasn't really a leader like that. And you could tell with the offense, so we don't need that type of thing going on. Maybe somebody step up. Maybe if it isn't Beck, I don't know if it is, or if it isn't any of the other guys, but we're going to need somebody to follow on offense next year. We need a bona fide leader on offense next year.
Well, Foss, I'm glad you said that, because I was going to segue into something different, which is who is coming back. We talked about the coaches coming back. We talked about the prospects of going, for a three-peat. To me, the biggest piece coming back is Cedric Von Granger, the center.
Oh, yeah.
He's the bona fide leader of that offense. He's a bona fide leader, period, in the classroom, off the field. We hear all the stories of, unfortunately what happened with Devin Willock, but who was there first on the scene. It's almost like, he's supposed to be, right? Because he's that leader.
Yeah, I was
with him coming back, it's amazing.
I was really crossing my fingers for that one. You know what I mean? Because let's keep it real, man. It's no matter. First of all, he's talented. So, he's talented. Linemen are rare. He was going to be on somebody's NFL roster had he left. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So that was a real possibility. So I was really crossing my fingers that he would stay. You don't really want to replace your center. Like you want to have that guy like in line. You know what I mean? You want to make sure you have the guy, but replacing the center isn't that easy. Especially one of his caliber.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. I mean, there's the physical talent, there's the leadership, and then regardless of who's playing quarterback, whether that's Beck or Stockton or Vandegrift, having Van Brand there to come up to the line and check protections and help, on the road in the SEC and, these loud environments. It's different coming in and playing in one of those games where, when the starters have already put the team up 40 and the stands are empty, than it is coming out first series of the game and the crowd's going wild. And, today's the day they have a chance to knock off number one back-to-back champs. And it's the composure card thing, right? It sounds corny, but I remember going back and watching the Ohio State game on TV a couple days after I got home from it. And there's a point in that game where things aren't going well for Georgia, and the camera catches Nolan Smith on the sidelines, and he walks up to somebody on defense, and he literally pulls this card out of his pocket that says composure, and he hands it to him. And it was everything's going to be all right. It's a 4-quarter game. Take this play by play. Let's stay calm. And and then at the end of the game, Nolan Smith's up on the stage. He's crying because it meant that much to him, right? And it's those are the dudes that's the difference between Georgia and Alabama right now. You want to know what it is? Those guys, those are that is the difference. Alabama has just as talented of high school prospects coming in, but it is the culture of accountability, and it is guys. The way you learn how to hold others accountable is by first allowing yourself to be held accountable by somebody else. And there's going to be guys that need to step up, to George's point. But having a couple still there that already know how to do this, and it's old hat for them. This time of year where, guys are running stairs and, all that, and some of the off-season work when coaches aren't around, it's the players that make sure their buddies aren't cheating on reps or missing class or all that stuff.
I swear we're all on the same wavelength today, because that is in my notes. I mean, really, it was the culture. The culture. Yeah, the culture. You talk about, Cedric coming back. You talk about that leadership. You talk about these guys that hold each other accountable. That is the difference, Graham. Just what you said. There's a lot of teams that are talented. Ohio State was talented. Alabama's talented. Michigan's talented, but what's the real difference? It's not just coaching. It's not just players. It's everybody buying in. You know, you start hearing these guys about NIL. I mean, heck, Florida's got issues down there, right? They get a 5-star recruit, a quarterback who can change their program. At least they believe so, right? He leaves.
Whoops.
Right. You know what I mean? NIL stuff. I mean, think about it. You don't go to Georgia for NIL. You don't. You can.
You can.
You know you're going to make a bag. Everybody's going to get a bag when you're back-to-back national champions.
Just to pause it for a little bit, it's crazy that I don't never really hear anything regarding NIL in Georgia.
Never.
And they have the second highest average NIL deal in all of college football.
Right. Why don't you? Culture.
Well,
like you win games, you do your job, you're going to get some money.
That's right.
Like,
mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like I think this guy's getting money there. You just don't hear about it.
Right. Yeah. And I think there's also a difference between doing NIL where it is like a reward for doing the things that you were supposed to do and that you've already done versus using NIL as a bargaining chip, you know, like throwing off the balance of the locker room, and all of a sudden this kid walks in the door, you know, 17 years old, day one, and he's making millions of dollars. And, you know, that, you know, starting offensive guard that's been here for 6 years is not, it's not how, you know, harmony happens amongst a group of 85 dudes. Right. So I think Kirby's done a good job of managing it, and like, because it's a balance, right? Like you can't sit there and say I'm anti-NIL because
it's a thing now. And if you're a kid coming in college right now, you have to consider that. And that has to factor into where you're going to school, because if you know it's significant money, it's money that could help. You know, like I know my mom could have used the money. You know what I mean? And so I know my mom could use the money, and, you know, we weren't dirt poor. I know guys that are dirt poor, like dirt, like the actual dirt on the ground. Like, you know what I mean? So like, it's something to think about. And it seems that they seem to be handling it pretty well up there in Athens.
Yeah, it's almost like Kirby would rather have a bunch of 4 stars or 3 stars and not deal with the issues and coach them up than have to deal with some of these NIL issues that some of these schools are willing to accept, because they're thinking that's going to jumpstart their program. When you look at it, you know, I'm not going to name names, but when you look at certain teams and certain programs, who are the ones that got in trouble with all these guys in the portal? Not in trouble in terms of violations, but portal guys leaving their programs. That's all I'm going to say. But you don't hear about that necessarily with Georgia. You might hear a guy like A.D. Mitchell who leaves, puts himself in the portal, but you don't know what circumstance. He's not leaving because of NIL necessarily. He's leaving because of a circumstance, you know. So it's completely different right now in Athens. That's all I'm going to say.
Well, I mean, look, there's a lot of guys on Georgia's roster. I mean, Nebraska, right? Like that's you know, have they been relevant the last 15, 20 years? Not really, but like you're talking about a program that has a ton of tradition. It's a Big Ten school. Like they got resources. They have as loyal a fan base as you're going to find anywhere in college football.
Money in the state of Nebraska.
Yeah, man. That cattle money don't play, dog. Omaha Steaks.
Man, listen, it's for real. It's for real.
For sure.
One of my better friends, it came down to Oklahoma and Nebraska.
Right there.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, and they got a beautiful stadium that sits, you know, 85, 90,000 people. They got everything you need. And it's very telling that, you know, like Jacob Hood, who, you know, was a 3rd or 4th string guy for Georgia, is wanted at Nebraska. MJ Sherman, who, Lamar, I know you love and we all love, and a guy who was Mr. All Everything out of high school. It never really clicked for him at Georgia, but is talented, and I know we'll all be pulling for him. You know, Nebraska, he's probably going to plug in and start. And I think what you are recruiting, if you're Nebraska, is not just the physical talent of those guys, but like it's that culture and it's that know-how of showing up and going to work every day and clocking in. And I think it's really interesting that, Bama even seems to want a little slice of that. Like Tresman Marshall, I'm not trying to be a hater, but like Tresman Marshall was the guy in Georgia's linebacker room who, amongst the inside linebackers, he played the fourth most snaps this year. Mm-hmm. He was behind Dumas Johnson and Mondon and Ryan Davis. And he may start for Alabama next season. Right. And they've had some attrition in that room, but it's just like that's a whole different level, and we've seen this going on for a while now. Like Jermaine Johnson and Tyreek Stevenson transfer out from Georgia, and they're immediately two of the best defensive players in the SEC. Johnson's a first round pick out of Florida State a year later. Stevenson shows up at Miami, plays really well for them. So, yeah, it's the Georgia way. It's not just the physical talent of these kids. And I think that gets missed a lot because, like, after the TCU game, you saw people being like, well, Georgia's got 105 stars. Why wouldn't they blow them out and all that? But it's like, dude, it's the secret sauce. The magic is getting a bunch of 5 stars to have a mentality like they're a bunch of 3 stars and play with a chip on their shoulder and believe they have something to prove. And that's what Kirby's been able to do.
Well, Graham, I know that we've been talking college football, and you guys mentioned it today on our chat. We got to talk about Georgia basketball. But it's funny because me and George were talking about before you got on, where's Duke? Where's North Carolina? Where's all these traditional schools that have been powerhouses, right? But you mentioned something that's pretty interesting to me. You mentioned that what Georgia has, which, this secret sauce, so to speak, and what other teams would rather have, and bring in somebody that has accountability, culture, has that tenacity. Some of these teams don't have it anymore. A team like Duke doesn't have it anymore. They don't have that leader in Coach K, right? Mm-hmm. North Carolina doesn't have it in Nadine Smith anymore. You don't have some of these guys leading these programs that have instilled that type of culture like Kirby has. That's why I believe they're going to be on top for a long time. But let's transition to the basketball. I mean, for a second, before everybody, before we get off here, what are your thoughts so far on the basketball program? I know right now we're looking at Tennessee, Georgia. I know Tennessee's winning right now. Georgia's about to hop off, but what's your thoughts on the basketball program as we've entered the 2023 season under Mike White?
Can I say something right quick?
Yes, you can.
We started talking about culture, and like something came up on Twitter today, and people were talking about, Bama, how will Kirby versus, I think it was brought up by somebody. They were watching something with Josh Speight, and how will Kirby versus Nick Saban be remembered? I don't know what was said on Lake Kick, whatever it is, but underneath the comments, they were like somebody. I believe it was who was from I got a podcast.
John.
Oh, Jim or John?
I think it was Jim. Somebody said something like, "Don't forget that Kirby's only 46."
Yeah, man.
There's a lot to go. And then like somebody under that was like, well, look at Jimbo. He won his and blah blah blah. And somebody else, who else won? Who it is? Like somebody else. They were saying that somebody else won and they fell off. You know what I mean? And and it was like nobody would have thought they would ever fallen off. And I was like, you really can't compare that to Kirby. Like Kirby it's different. It's very different. Like the culture is very different. How he handles things is very different. He's, I feel like he really takes it to heart that he's a Georgia alumni. Mm-hmm. Like, not to say that, these other guys weren't, he was somebody else that was an alumni of their school that won, and they all of a sudden fell off. I got to find that tweet, but I just don't see it happening with Kirby like that.
I think he'd walk away from the game.
It could be the homer in me, but I just see it's just the way that culture is built. I don't see it falling off anytime soon.
Right.
I agree.
I think he would still build a program that was respectable, that the fans would respect, because of what we've grown accustomed to seeing in terms of what he produces, the culture, the accountability. I even think, as much as we've gone back to back and things like that, if this was a team that would have hiccups and lose a game here or there, fans would respect it, just based off of how it happened, because of what he's built. Not necessarily because he's a two-time national champion, but head coaching national champion, but what he means and what he stands for. And I think that speaks volumes, especially for Dog Nation.
Well, and Georgia's not, you're not going to win a title every year, but with this thing going to 12 teams, you're going to be in the playoff every year as long as Kirby Smart's the coach. Maybe once a decade you're not, but especially with the portal now, man, and, just what Georgia has established, dude, Dylan Raiola, right, is a perfect example. We don't know that he's going to sign with Georgia, and Georgia's trending in the right direction with him right now. And talking about a kid who, I don't know, man, 2 years ago, think about all the narratives around Georgia's offense and how outdated it was, and Kirby Smart's meddling in the offense. And, he's just a defensive coach who's never going to get over the hump. And now this year, your former two-star walk-on became the first 4,000-yard passer in school history and just won the Manning Award and, a ton of other accolades. This program has been fully modernized and weaponized, and it's not, once you're a pickle, you don't turn back into a cucumber, and Georgia football is a pickle now.
Facts. I agree 100%.
Speaking of our two-time national championship quarterback, I asked a friend of mine that's still in scouting earlier today that he just got around to responding. I was telling him, I don't have a comp for Stetson as far as in the league, as far as measurables and traits are concerned. And I asked him what he thought. He said he doesn't have one either. He said, I like his tape. And this is an NFL executive. He's going to get a shot.
Oh yeah.
I don't know many 5'11", 180-pound quarterbacks. There's probably never been one. We've had shorter. We've had Flutie. Drew Brees kind of big. Nobody's has been in that position that's as skinny as Stetson. You know what I mean?
I think Bryce is skinnier than he is, though.
I agree.
They're similar. Bryce weighs more, supposedly. You know what I mean? But
I don't buy that, though.
Yeah, it's not that much more, if anything. But
Stetson has the employee discount over at Cane's. He's gaining weight.
It's gonna be interesting, man. I trust my guys that I scouted with. It was I can't say you trust every NFL scout, but just luckily I worked with some guys that I respect. And it's just interesting to see what they had to say about Stetson. You know what I mean? I think he's going to get a shot. And no, you couldn't have told anybody that 3 years ago that he was going to have a shot at playing in the NFL.
Before you jump off, what do you think of these two? And it's definitely not a perfect comp, but if I had to compare them to any recent guy in the league, I would say Baker Mayfield or Heineke, the kid out of Washington.
Was it
you that said Heineke a couple of weeks ago?
Well, that was me. Then. I didn't know where I said. I thought I had said it to some friends. I did say it to some friends, but I might have said it in our chat too. That now Heineke is a little thicker. You know what I mean? But I just remember I had Heineke, on my list of guys to do when I was still scouting, and so I was watching his Old Dominion tape, and he just popped off tape. You know what I mean? He wasn't a notable prospect, but just watching him play, I was like, this kid has something. Then you look up some years later, he's starting the NFL game. Like, you just saw it. You know what I'm saying? There was an it factor that I saw, and I ended up being right. You know what I mean? Is he going to be all world? You know what I mean? No, he's probably, may not start next year, but I wasn't wrong with what I saw.
But you know what, George? It's not wrong with what you saw, but those kind of guys, when they enter a locker room, they feel like, I'm here to take somebody's job. I'm here to survive. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like a guy like Stetson, who's already borderline really cocky to begin with, but that cockiness is a positive for him. He goes into an NFL locker room, depending on who the quarterback is, that's already starting. He could possibly take somebody's job for a game or two and win over the fan base, because that's the kind of guy he is. He's going to win over the locker room. He won over Georgia's locker room. He's going to win over a lot of people. And when you have that, that's a very hard force to stop. You can't slow that down very often when a person is operating with that type of energy. So I could see him going to a team and actually, starting a few games.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see, like I said, seems kind of small. He had excellent protection this year. You don't really see, you don't really know. Stetson hasn't had to play under much duress. In the NFL, you will. It's just different. Defenders are just too good. And sometimes you're going to end up with a crappy line. You know what I mean? And he's going to be playing with backups in the preseason, the extra crappy line. So, it's just going to be interesting to see how he does. But it bodes well for him. I'm pretty sure everyone's going to like the tape. You know what I mean? So there's going to be a lot of projecting going on with Stetson. They're going to have to project to see how he's going to do with adversity and all that stuff. But I'm interested. It's going to be a fun ride to see where he ends up. One thing I do know is that no matter what happens, if he plays 10 years or fizzles out after this preseason, there's a story, and he's going to make a lot of money with that story. Even if it stops at, his rookie year or whatever, or it's going to be an awesome story that gets told. You know what I mean? So it's gonna be fine. Stetson's gonna remain a legend.
One thing I will say about Stetson that might help him is and George, you obviously know way more NFL people and scouts and stuff like that than I do, but I have talked to a couple people that have told me they think, when it comes combine time, when it comes time for him to run the 40, they think he'll run high 4.5s, low 4.6s. He's quick. Stetson. Yeah. I mean, he has not been under duress much, but he also is one of those that I think part of the reason why he hasn't been under duress very much and why he was only sacked 9 times last year is because he does do a good job of getting out of the pocket and, either getting out of a dead play or, turning it into a little short run.
Well, we will have Emory Hunt back on the show. Last year we had him on talking about dogs going to the NFL. He's a CBS analyst, has his own company in itself. He's the czar of the playbook. So I can't wait to hear what he says about not just Stetson, but the rest of the dogs. But it's going to be interesting what people think about Stetson. Real interesting.
One more for you on Stetson. What about Trace McSorley? I think he's a better throwing. I think he's a more accurate Trace McSorley. Trace
is a really strong arm, though, man. Even if you hear about, when you hear about those Arizona receivers, they say the same thing. He's got a cannon. The ball just pops off his hands, you know what I mean? But I think with Stetson, not as strong an arm, but I could see that comparison, no doubt about it.
Just footwork and just kind of
the thing about Stetson does surprise me sometimes with the zip on the ball. Some of those throws, especially like the intermediate stuff. Yeah, he underthrows some deep balls sometimes. There are a number of quarterbacks in the NFL that do that. Like there's not a death knell for quarterbacks, especially because competent quarterbacks are rare.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you got guys like what's my man that was at Texas? Oh, Colt McCoy.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah,
he's competent.
Yeah,
he can play football. You know what I mean? So, there's a chance for him.
Yeah, I agree. All right, man. All right, Foss. I know you're getting off, but hopefully the next show that we have, because now we switch to every 2 weeks. We're going to talk a little bit more about early signing or late signing period, the official signing period, right? February 1st coming up. Excuse me, but also talking more about Georgia basketball. Wanted to get into that a little bit today.
Yeah.
Mike White, 13-6. Today they're playing Tennessee. Right now, as we're actually recording, it's 45-30 Tennessee. I mean, they're
not going great.
Not going great.
Tennessee is number 4 in the country.
Number 4 in the country, Graham.
And they're on the road.
On the road. What's your thoughts so far on Mike White? I got my own perceptions, but what's your thoughts?
So my thoughts on Mike White is that his team, look, man, I mean, I was as harsh a critic of Tom Crean as anybody.
Right?
buddy. Like, yeah.
Did you get blocked by Crean?
No, remind me to tell you one time about the time that he followed me on Twitter for like 3 days and then unfollowed me. And that was like in the middle of the offseason. I wasn't even thinking about him. It was he was lurking, dude. He must have hit that follow button by mistake. My thing with Tom Crean was always like he recruited some real talent to Athens, and obviously Anthony Edwards is one of those guys. But like, I mean, he recruited a class that had, I believe, 6 top 100 overall players, and the only one that didn't transfer out ultimately was Anthony Edwards, and that's because he was a one and done and the number 1 overall pick. And now he's the fastest, I think, to some number of 3-pointers in league history in the NBA. But point being, with Tom Crean, he had this whole positionless basketball thing, and you would see his teams come down the floor, and it would turn into ISO over and over. It would turn into, 4 guys standing around watching one try to break down 3 defenders, and it wasn't good. It didn't work. And I think Mike White is running a system that is maximizing the talent of his players. I want to be clear,
8 portals.
Yeah, 8 portals. He's brought some guys in, but like, I think the biggest testimony to what he's done is a guy like Cario Aquindo, who was the lone bright spot really off of Georgia's team last year and was one of the, leading points per game guys in the SEC. He came back and he accepted a very different role, and he defends his ass off. And, he's not the guy that the entire offense runs through, and he's okay with that. And I think that, we've talked all about the culture of Georgia football being the big separator. And I think Mike White is building a really good culture, and his teams do all the little things that don't require talent. Like I played basketball, through high school, and by no means was I a great basketball player or a gifted athlete, but I played on a high school team with 6 dudes that went on to play D1. And, the reason I was able to stick on that roster, even if I was a bench guy, was because like I did the things that don't require any talent and require effort, right? Like defending does not require talent 98% of the time. It might when it comes time to block a shot at the rim. But like those are the things, boxing somebody out with proper technique does not require talent. Having awareness of the clock and the game situation does not require talent. And Mike White's guys are doing those things. And they're going to lose to Tennessee tonight, and it's going to be 3 in a row, which is crappy. They were at 13-4, and we'll see how the rest of the season goes for them. I think if the fact that they're going to be in a conversation, hopefully for probably an NIT bid, is a huge achievement in year 1 for them. They're down 17 right now in Knoxville, but they're still playing hard. And like they are getting out-talented, outshot right now. But they still need that low post guy for sure. They don't have that inside presence yet. But I think he's doing the most with what he's got. And I think, 10-1 at home at Stegman Coliseum, we might be starting to call it the White House here before long, man.
You know what? Shout out to my guy, Josh Brooks. And I'm going to say this because, you got Kirby who starts off with the football program and they changed the culture. And I thought about this as we started transitioning to basketball. Mike White is changing the culture of Georgia basketball. Even if you want to go to Coach Abe and the women's team, changing the culture. You talked about, Crane bringing in the guys with positionless basketball. You can't do that anymore. You can't win that way anymore. As a matter of fact, with teams that are winning, they're winning more with a culture that is more team-oriented. And when you look at Mike White and what he did at Florida, he positioned his team based off of defensive stops, sound basketball. I mean, they had good recruiting, not great recruiting, but good recruiting, right? I think that with Georgia and having the pipeline that it has, the talent in the state, along with what the football program's doing, along with what the resources are going to bring to Mike White, this team will be transitioning to what it needs to be very soon. You see the ups and downs, but those ups and downs are because of 8 transfers, portal guys. It's because of changing the culture. It's because of not having the overall talent. But once he gets his guys in-house, I mean, we're talking about perennial 20-win seasons, 22, 24-win seasons. We're talking about a team that can challenge in the SEC easily. Why Florida, turn their back on White is beyond me. I mean, I know it's because of, the Billy Donovan era and what they saw there with what he was doing, obviously. But you want this type of coach in-house. I'm going to take it back to, obviously people who've listened to the show long enough know that I'm from Pittsburgh. But when Pittsburgh brought in, what the heck is the guy's name over there at TCU? Jamie Dixon. All right. But Dixon wasn't the first guy to change the actual culture. It was Ben Howland. Mm-hmm. When Ben Howland changed the culture, then Dixon comes in and just replicates what Howland had done. They didn't have top 100 recruits. Not at all. It was all about culture. You do your job. This guy does his job. Hold each other accountable, and you'll win.
Great.
Mike White is doing that.
Yeah.
He's doing that. And when you mention Aquindo actually coming back and actually accepting a role where he's not the lead scorer, he's not even leading the team in scoring. When you accept that role, that means a lot to a program. Where that kid comes back, who could have gone pro, he might have been a second-round guy, might have been an unrestricted free agent, something like that. But when you are able to bring that guy back in-house, that means a ton. This program is going to change overnight, and people better jump on board now, get their tickets, their season tickets at the Steg, because I believe this guy's going to actually have this team top 15, top 10 within the next 2 years easily. I mean, it's just happening before your eyes, folks. Just watch.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, my thing with Georgia basketball is, the history is pretty bleak. Mm-hmm. And my thing with Georgia basketball is just if they could ever get a guy who, would compete for NCAA tournament bids year in and year out, that, like if Georgia could keep 2 of the top 10 to 15 players in the state home every year, then that thing will take off like a rocket ship. And I think they're doing enough to, legitimize the program. You mentioned Josh Brooks, and I think before we wrap up this conversation, what I really want to do is shout him out because, you talk about a pretty inventive out-of-the-box hire, going to your arch rival and hiring a guy who, the fan base there was fed up with him, but he, you take COVID out of the equation, he had been to, I believe, 5 straight NCAA tournaments, taking his team to an Elite Eight. There was a lot of basketball coaches hired in the SEC last year at Florida, at LSU, at Missouri. And, the jury is still out on a lot of these guys as first-year head coaches who have never been in the Power Five. But there was only one head coach hired in the SEC last year who, was a proven commodity at the P5 level and in the league. And I think, White's knowledge of the league and the rosters in the league and the teams and the players on the opponents they face week in and week out has also been a big part of why they were, able to have this start. And those of you who don't remember, it's worth mentioning. I mean, Georgia won 6 games last year in basketball. They won one SEC contest. Yeah. So I don't know how the season will close out. I mean, it's going to be harder for them as teams get better scouting reports, and he's still tweaking with the roster and all that. They're not ready to compete with the Tennessees and Alabamas of the league, but they beat Auburn at home, right? Yep. They beat a top 25 Auburn team that was ranked number 1 in the country at one point last year. So the big takeaway, I think, is that they are worth your time and attention. And, they deserve your support because I think it's a team that's easy to watch. The Korean teams were so frustrating to watch because they just didn't do the little things. And I think the Mike White teams, they might not win night in, night out, every time, but they're going to make you feel like they're getting the most out of their talent.
Well, they're a team you can respect. You know what I mean? It's a team that you're going to watch a game and you're going to feel good about it, win or lose. But when it comes down to recruiting, when you want to go into a kid's house, especially in an NIL era, especially in the AAU era where everybody's like, it's all about me. If he's able to go inside of a room and say, look, this is what we're building. This is what I want from you as you come into this program. He's going to pull some guys and he's going to pull some people that people are going to want to pull for. Again, I go back to some of those teams that were winning back in the day. I mean, heck, we know Duke is going to win. We know North Carolina is going to win. Kansas. I mean, heck, they're getting top 5s. They're getting the cream of the crop, along with some of the greatest coaches that have ever coached this game of basketball. But when you look at teams that have always been around, even going back to Huggy Bear at Cincinnati, he didn't have top 100 guys. He got the degenerate player. But he still had a culture within his degenerate players that he had, right? So as long as Mike White can develop his culture, sell those recruits on that culture, and get guys to really buy in, you're going to see something different. And it doesn't have to – I just want to always warn fans because it's not like football. You don't have to have a top 3 recruiting class to win a national championship. You just have to have a bunch of guys that buy in. And, that's my only experience of being there with the University of Pittsburgh and understanding that because I was on the front lines with that with my family running a national All-American, basketball game and my dad being a basketball coach, my brother being a top 100 player. So I know the game from that angle. But when you got a bunch of guys buying in and a leader that's taking them in a certain direction, you're going to be in good shape. So shout out to the basketball program. We'll get more in detail with that as the weeks come on. We talked about it earlier. The 100 Sanford podcast is going to move to every 2 weeks now, up until probably about G-Day, and then we'll take a little bit of a break in the summer. Take a little bit of a break during the summer, but before we get up out of here, just some recruiting updates. I think last week, Jalen Hayward committed, the number 3 safety, 34 overall, speed and power. Think about Bullard, but think about a more powerful, more explosive Bullard right now. When you think about Jalen Hayward, I mean, he's exciting to bring into the fold. Ellis Robinson, the 4th, he's going to be committing next week as well. The number 1 cornerback in the country for IMG Academy via New York City. All projections show Georgia. I'm predicting Georgia. Great kid. He's a friend of the podcast. He's been on the podcast. But if you go back and look at their tape from IMG, there's a kid that always pops on tape. It's Ellis Robinson, the 4th. I mean, you were thinking he was a bona fide 23 class recruit, and he's not. He's 24. And last but not least, Deuce Robinson, the number 1 tight end from Phoenix, Arizona. He's going to be committing next week. All projections say Georgia, but we'll see. Hopefully, Harley does what he does, man. But
talk about a dude that will play right away and continue the
tradition, the new tradition
run of sick tight ends that Georgia's had. That's one of them.
Yeah, man, I can't wait on that. But we'll see what happens. Maybe we'll have a pop-up show next week or something like that for a recruiting update. But with that being said, man, we've done what we've done today. Can't wait to see you guys in a couple weeks. And as usual, see you at 100 Sanford.
100 Sanford.
Go Dogs.
Go Dogs.
Thank you for listening to the 100 Sanford podcast. Tune in weekly to hear fresh content from the 100 Sanford podcast every Thursday, but also with some pop-up shows every now and then as news breaks. You can also follow the content on our website, www.100sanfordpodcast.com, and email us at dogs@100sanfordpodcast.com. Lastly, reach out to us on social media streams. For Twitter, it's at 100 Sanford, but on IG, TikTok, Facebook, and other accounts, it's 100 Sanford Podcast. All right, folks, that's it. And as usual, see you at 100 Sanford.